Good afternoon, everyone. We are here on Overdose and Chill Live today, October 22nd, Thursday afternoon. We were joined today by Jamie Sutton, the General Manager of the Americas for Omnisend. So welcome, Mr. Sutton.
Why, thank you, Andrew. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Fantastic. So, you and I have known each other for a while. I think we really got to know each other over the past few years, mainly at conferences, ducking out, having a drink here and there, and just collaborating on things. And we have these conversations pretty frequently. And I thought that every time I come away from these conversations, I'm smarter for having had them, and they're always very insightful. So I thought it would have some value for folks to hear what's on your mind and how your mind works and how you operate here in the ecosystem.
So thanks, and likewise.
Appreciate that. So thanks for joining us. You've had quite a journey here in the tech ecosystem, and would certainly love to hear before we get to Omnisend and what you guys are doing over there. We'd love to hear a bit about you, your background, and what you've been up to for the past, 10 years, because it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has. So it's been an interesting one. Actually started off on the agency side, on the developer side, and found e-commerce pretty kind of early on, 03, 04. I got very kind of lucky, right place, right time, and ran into Toby, the founder of Shopify. And got an invite to open a beta store, and the rest, as they say, is history. I think I drank the Shopify Kool-Aid pretty early on. Immediately recognized the kind of time to value, our ROI, and really built a practice around it. That was that went on for a few years, and then I got invited to join in Shopify, and had a pretty good journey there, helping to support kind of front-end development, externally. So if you're a merchant, if you're another agency, you're having issues with, say, Liquid or API calls, myself or many, others on the team would jump in to try to kind of troubleshoot you and help you. And then, really, from that SI and agency background, kind of moved over into kind of the business development side, and the partnership side, knowing a lot of agencies, and really moved on to kind of co-start Shopify Plus with our now CEO, now president, and a salesperson. And, we had some really good brands early on, but we didn't really have a mechanism to address the needs of a large SMB or a mid-market merchant. With the way that we, kind of message to the market, with the way that we supported those larger merchants. And so obviously Shopify Plus was born to kind of take care of that. And I had the nice benefit of working with a lot of agencies over the years that are now core kind of foundation of the Shopify Plus agency system, as well as the ancillary technology. So I think it's safe to say that e-commerce is near and dear to my heart. I love everything about online and retail and helping merchants, and the technologies that make everything tick.
Cool, very great. And since leaving Shopify, I know you took some time to really look at the market and see what was out there, and I know you had a lot of options for the next thing you wanted to do. So I'm curious, how did you end up? Well, perhaps before then, just want to let everyone know if you have any questions, comments, by all means, jump in and leave them, and we'll adjust them as they come up. So maybe first, tell us a bit about Omnisend, and then if you can tell us the journey, how you got there, and really want to understand why Omnisend, what you saw there, and how you guys are different than the other folks entrenched in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left Shopify, I had these illusions of grandeur that I was gonna, sit and drink cocktails by the ocean, but
which you don't do at all, right?
I don't do that at all, ever. But I'm one of those kind of busybodies. I'm always curious, and always kind of need a puzzle to solve, or something to kind of work through. And so I started doing some advising. Got reintroduced to Ritas, the CEO of Omnisend, and really kind of started digging into the product. They were kind of on a really nice kind of growth wave, and really looking at them as a MarTech solution with that e-commerce first narrative, and purpose-built narrative, and really started to get excited, because they had built this MarTech platform in a slightly different way. It was a really approachable piece of software, across a wide range of merchants, all the way down to they've got a lot of free merchants all the way up to mid-market merchants. So that obviously is really interesting to me. But at the core of the platform, the way that they had kind of decoupled from email really early on, made the product very interesting. So at the heart of Omnisend is a lightweight CDP. And what that allows is really that decoupling. A lot of people don't think about it, but the golden age of email, and I know everybody's always like, email's dead. Email's never going to be dead. People just get over it.
It might kill us, but it's never
it's never going to be dead. But most platforms, in fact, all platforms, I'd love to hear if there's some others out there, are built around the unique identifier being an email address. Yep. But in a lot of ways, we have graduated. People have a lot of different ways that they communicate, and email is only one. So some people may check out of a website and never use their email. They may use, their phone number. They may use just their address for a PO or COD. And the way that the platform is built is really to address communicating with that consumer across multiple channels, and not necessarily having to have an email address as a unique identifier. So to me, there was a lot of interesting things going on. And some unique problems to solve, some unique challenges, and they needed a U.S. office and to get a little bit closer to a good bit of the merchant base. So that's an area that is near and dear to my heart as well. So here we are. We are now a year in. We've got 16 people in the U.S. offices, plural. We have technically 16 offices right now due to COVID. But we've got quite a few people here in Charleston, several in Austin, one in New York, Chicago, LA, San Diego. And I'm definitely ready to get past COVID and get back into some offices and get back to some conferences so I can see great people like you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Feelings mutual. So, I saw that you guys recently hit 100 employees, so congrats on that milestone.
Thank you very much.
I understand that the platform originated in Lithuania, grew there significantly in Europe, mm-hmm. and then wanted to make this push into the North American market, hence you entering the picture there. As we've talked about, we've seen so many techs try and make that move, trying to jump and break into the US, techs, merchants, and otherwise, and many of them fail. So I'm curious, what did you see as the biggest challenges to successfully entering the market the way you guys have, and what have you done differently to ensure that this is not a short use, push?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's some advantages. Omnisend has grown organically in North America. So unlike some of the stories that you and I know pretty well, where, you're coming in, you're probably using like a sales-led growth strategy, which means you're trying to kind of, push your way into a market. Unlike a lot of those experiences, a very large portion of Omnisend's merchants are already here in North America, right? So it's more getting closer to them, being able to be more geographically located to partners. And unlike some of the stories that you and I are familiar with, Omnisend was not built in kind of a Eurocentric way from a software perspective. It's built in a very universal way. Again, e-commerce being very large player and very dominant in, North America, US, Canada, the organic growth was there to facilitate it. So it wasn't the other way around where, we're trying to kind of come into the market and start to generate users, but rather following the market and accentuating and helping the needs of an existing user base.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
When you guys did make that move into the US, I imagine a big part of that push was on the marketing and certainly the conference and networking side of that. That you had pretty grand plans there to whether it were Shop Talk or eTail West or all the slew of sort of January through August events that we normally have every month. So
yeah,
combined with being a new tech into the market and not being able to use those traditional sort of growth and marketing strategies, how did you overcome that?
So yeah, I think everybody had to pivot their field marketing plans for this year, and we had very grand plans. I think we had slated 50 events over the course of the year, so that's averaging one per week, every single week over week, and we've had to pivot. So for me, one of the ways to pivot, obviously, is to adapt to a digital first. Which I think we've done a pretty good job with. We've had some digital conferences. And I think that, the messaging doesn't change. If you're going to, the goal is to bring value to the merchant. So if you're bringing good content, best practices, nobody wants to be hit over the head with a sales message, even at a conference. What they want to do is have a deep understanding of how you're going to make their life easier, how you're going to make them more money, how you're going to save them time. So while the message doesn't change, the medium has. So I think one of the challenges, is really on the partnership side, right? A lot of that partner relationships are driven in person, and those conferences really help to build the rapport, help to build the relationship, help to build the trust factor, and we've had to take the same approach there as well, which with a lot of kind of one-to-one personal reach outs and relationship building. So the medium may have changed, but the end result is the same, and the messaging is really the same.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that feedback. In that, on that same topic of growth and new markets and discussing how folks have come in and been unsuccessful, and sort of that approach of go heavy on the sales side, maybe buy a few merchants, get those deals at bargain basement prices just to get that logo name and trust that logo will carry you through and have the traction necessary to bring on other merchants. So, how have you guys approached the market, if you're willing to share? From a hiring perspective, who you've been looking for, what positions do you focus on, and where do you see the biggest benefit in your hiring structure?
Yeah, so merchants are always first. So account management and merchant success is number one. So making sure that we've got really smart and we've got a really great team who are very similar to me. They're very enthusiastic about e-commerce and merchants success. So to me, that's the cornerstone, and that's one of the main drivers of being very close to where the merchant is and being able to help them, give them best practices, guide them. And so that combined with sales and partnerships are kind of the key core fundamentals, obviously. And I think they're all intrinsically connected, right? If you look at kind of a merchant first organization, sales should be merchant first. It should be education. It should be discovery. It should be ensuring that we're actually selling something that is going to solve the main challenge of a particular merchant. If you look at account management, it's the same thing. And one thing after sale, the salesperson works with the account manager to onboard the merchant to make sure that there's a smooth transition. I'm sure we've all seen the kind of old school enterprise sales tactics where the contract gets signed and the salesman kind of giggles and runs the other way as quickly as possible. So I think when it's merchant first, even around the partnerships, every partner, whether it's an SI and agency like Overdose, the good ones always have the merchant's best interest first and foremost. And so I think, if you look at those kind of three pieces of that triangle, the merchant's in the center of all of those operations. So when looking to build out a team, the first places I start are those those three direct areas. And again, with kind of merchant facing growth, marketing is not the first hire. Luckily, we've already got a great marketing team, but the product sells itself. And your job is there to support it, make sure that it's the right product for the right merchant, and that you're there to have their interest first and foremost.
Yep, absolutely, 100% agreed on that. So you guys are growing, working out very well. You've got a great team. I know a bunch of them, have known some for years. Now, one of the challenges, sort of switching topics a little bit here, that I certainly face, and I imagine you do as well, is when you're working internationally and you've got both clients, client merchants, as well as teammates overseas, different time zones.
Mm-hmm.
How do you and your team manage that? I know for me, I do suffer from a bit of FOMO. So if there are folks working in Australia, New Zealand, and it's 2 in the morning for me, I feel like if I'm not there, I'm missing out, and that's on me. Just barely managing that work-life balance when you've got your headquarters, which is 7 hours ahead of East Coast, and certainly further ahead from folks you have West Coast and Midwest.
Yeah, it's I think it's a challenge, and I think it's going to continue. It's a challenge I've lived with for years, though, right? I mean, if you're doing e-commerce, you're taking meetings with somebody in Singapore, you're taking meetings with somebody in Italy or Europe. So I think what my tactic is to set up those blocks and to make sure that there's enough crossover time. And we've got folks on the West Coast that they wake up earlier, but they also tend to stop a little bit earlier as well. At least I try to get them to stop a little bit earlier as well. So there are some adjustments, and I think too, one of the things, and I know everybody talks about work-life balance and mindfulness and everything. Those are not catchphrases. Like, you have to make sure that your team is taking the time to kind of recoup and re-energize themselves. And unfortunately with COVID, one of the things that you can control is right in front of you at the screen. Like, there's always an email to answer. There's always something that can be done. So making sure that you actually force yourself to walk away, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. I know we're all in our social bubbles, but having that kind of end of day, beginning of day kind of signaling, so that you can kind of decouple is really important. And I know it's a challenge, especially going towards the west is probably a little bit more difficult than towards the east. I know we've all been at conferences in California, and you're like, oh, I see why the West Coast doesn't like the East Coast that much when you're, getting up at 5 a.m. for a 6 a.m. meeting. So I think also just being aware that not everybody is in the same state of mind that you are at that particular time and day. You may be having coffee while somebody else is cracking open an IPA somewhere. And so you're in different mental spaces at different times in the day. And so I think being hyper aware of that as well is super helpful.
Cool. Yep, absolutely. And I feel, merchants, when one of the things that we always talk about when we talk about our tech ecosystem and our partnerships, and, this idea that your technology is only as good as the team that supports it, right? Doesn't matter how good your tech is, if your team sucks, it sucks. So we're always very focused on, who those people are and who those teams are that support it. And that's how we position it with our clients, right? There may be several solutions that have relative feature parity. One of those, 80% of merchants get 80% of what they need. But, what are you finding in this market? Certainly more with this distributed work from home model, where it may be less important that if you're based in New York as a merchant, that entity has a New York office. But how are you guys positioning yourselves with your distributed model and, US, Lithuania, international, with sort of how you're supporting your clients?
Yeah. So, luckily for me, we've got an amazing customer operations team. And even before I joined, 24/7, 365 support. So the support, light never turns off. We do have to take a different approach when it comes to, active, like proactive account management. So, that's for our pro and enterprise mid-market customers. But that we try to kind of stick to kind of a pre-scheduled, QBR style, like strategy meetings. But the product is extremely well supported. Same on the partnership side. We always try to make sure that, partner managers are available to answer those questions, Monday through Friday. If it overflows, then we have that 24/7 hours, 24/7, 365 support.
Cool. We actually do have a question, and the question is, what are your thoughts on the market trends, B2C, B2B, and adoption of SaaS platforms across the board? So the movement of B2B, if at all, to SaaS, and what that looks like, and your views on it.
That's a really good question. So I think, we've got our legacy players. I'm not going to name any names out there on both kind of the B2B ERP centralized kind of approach, and then we've got the webified approach as well. And I think there's a lot of definitions here of B2B. There's kind of that B2B retail, which is EDI focused, and there is kind of B2B that is more trying to replicate the D2C model with that webified version of B2B. So there has been some evolution there, but it's still got a long way to catch up. I've talked to companies over the year who are like, I'm gonna, API-ify EDI and turn it into, a SaaS model. And the reality is, if you've ever looked at EDI documentation, it's like 3 New York City phone books with lookup code. So the reality is not great there. So I think the way I look at it is, when I'm working with a B2B merchant, it's why are they operating in a specific way? And sometimes just asking questions, you'd be amazed. Sometimes the merchant doesn't even know. They're like, Bob in accounting used to do it like that, but he died 3 years ago, and I don't know why we're still doing it like that. Yep. So I think there are ways to simplify the B2B process. I've worked with merchants who have literally, line sheets across, 40,000 accounts, and each account has a separate line item price sheet. And you have to wonder, like, do you really need a matrix of 40,000 by, however many, hundred thousands of rows from a pricing perspective? So I think for me, it's like discovery. How do we actually figure out what's of value in your B2B in the way that you sell business to business, and how can you simplify that and get that into a webified approach?
Great, appreciate that. You definitely always run into those situations, specifically with often family businesses, family B2B businesses that are just, it's been in the family, and you get that question, as you noted, which is, why do you guys do it this way? And it's, as you said, because we've always done it that way.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's really, it's really rewarding for us when we come up against that, and we sort of help merchants see that and bring that sort of automation to manual processes that have been there forever. Yeah. We have another question here. Is there a way to fully automate the marketing process? Probably where software fully replaces the human interaction. Let's try to fully understand the question. Is there a way to fully automate the marketing processes? I guess that's the question.
So is AI and machine learning going to contribute? Yeah, I think you probably got it right, 99% maybe. I think we're definitely many, many years off from that. And I think what you're going to find, though, is that the AI is replacing the decision tree. So, we move into a world where, multivariate, advertising, gets quicker, obviously, with the more interactions that happen, the more conversions that happen. I know that there are some platforms already digging on this from the multivariate perspective. It will trickle down into marketing as well. There's always, though, going to be human touch. Somebody has to write the copy. Somebody has to understand the personas. I don't know that a machine or an AI is going to 100% replace the way that you tell the story about your brand. And let's face it, like, nobody buys something, simply, cosmically based on a reflex. They buy based on emotion, and you're not going to get emotion out of a machine or artificial intelligence. So I think some of it, yeah, but it's probably going to be more around, conversion optimization, multivariate testing. There's still going to be somebody that has to sell you a story and sell you a dream.
Have you not seen Ex Machina?
I have, actually.
As you're talking about AI and other techs in the stack, I feel like there are these expansions and these cycles in the market of expansion and contraction of your tech stack. In that there are times when merchants and we want sort of an all-in-one solution, and just you use that, you plug it in and let them go. And then as that evolves and more techs pop up around the edges, you start to realize that your all-in-one solution does not have those best-in-class technologies. And you start seeing these spot solutions for those things, and you start bringing those in your tech stack. And then you get to the point where the merchant looks at their ledger, and they realize they have 60 tech vendors for their e-commerce platform. Yeah. And then it becomes, all right, let's scale down our vendors, let's find more solutions. And I think we're seeing that in the market now. We're seeing acquisitions across, not just in a specific vertical, but across our tech verticals. What are your thoughts on the evolution and sort of the future there with getting, obviously many of the marketing automation platforms have brought in SMS. You've got folks who are traditionally UGC who brought in loyalty. So where do you see the trajectory going there?
This is a great question. And, I think there's always power in best in breed point solutions. I look at some legacy e-commerce platforms that sold the merchant on having all of these features bundled in. They bundled in some amazing kind of AI driven Elasticsearch function, or they bundled in reviews or loyalty. But what I found talking to merchants over the years is that's great, it's all bundled, and that warrants the higher ticket value, at least from a perception, value to money perception. But what happens is, the merchant starts using them. They realize that those aren't best in breed. They have specific, and that's when they end up bringing these point solutions back in. And so I think what happens is they kind of wake up a few years later and they're like, look, I'm paying for platform X that came with, search, personalization, merchandising, loyalty, UGC, and I'm using none of it because I brought in best in breed UGC. I brought in a best in breed search. I brought in a best in breed merchandising platform. So I think the way I look at it is, as much as you can bring in is in the beginning is good, because you want to simplify that decision tree for a smaller merchant. The fact of the matter is, as they grow, their needs are going to start to get more specific. They're going to have use cases that can't be bundled into an all-encompassing suite, and they're still going to look outside as they get larger. So, I mean, good and bad, but I think there's always a growth stage where whatever you have built is going to have an 80-20 rule. It's just the way it is. And the larger a merchant gets, and the more specific they get with their user experience requirements, they're going to have specialization needs, and they're going to have to go outside of that stack.
Yeah, no, absolutely hear you. There's a specific area right now where I'm just seeing just a ton of activity, and that's in the search area. I must have spoken with half a dozen different search providers in the past month that I'd never come across. They've certainly been in the market, but I haven't. And now, whether it's because of increased traffic, because of in COVID and merchants now having folks shop online who historically didn't, or shopping for things they didn't historically, and search is becoming more important. But so what have you seen as trends in the ecosystem space over the past year or so, and where do you think those are going, and what technologies do you think are being elevated that may not have been elevated until we've been in this sort of work from home lockdown mode?
Mm-hmm. So I think the post-purchase user experience has gotten much more important. Owning that relationship and ensuring that there's a great experience after the purchase. So I've seen a lot of platforms, jumping into the space there that I think are disruptive. Malomo is one. Narvar obviously is kind of a legacy player there. But I think that is going to be a space that continues to evolve. I know Happy Returns has expanded greatly since COVID to make that, again, that kind of RMA and returns process a lot smoother. Even Amazon stepped up with trying, to get you, if you need to, you can, return at some of their retail locations at Whole Foods. So I think, everything around that experience piece and making sure that you're doing the absolute best you can to create a similar experience that you would from a D2C perspective. The other thing, from a retail perspective, the other thing is, I think, the conversational commerce. I'm not much of a shopper. I'm the typical guy. I go shopping probably once a year, but when I do, what's important to me is having somebody there, from a clothing perspective or shoes that is going to, help me and guide me. And that obviously is completely missing in a digitized version of a shopping experience. So I think that conversational commerce piece is also one that's getting some really quick iterations and becoming kind of more pivotal to the importance of somebody who's shopping. Are they going to get that instant help and get that instant guidance around the products that are being offered?
Yeah, no, and that's great. Absolutely spot on. There are other areas where we're seeing, certainly with the uptick, that merchants are getting a bit overwhelmed and looking for solutions, are areas like customer service, right? Customer inquiries. Again, if you're buying something online that you historically, like you may buy shoes in person, is there someone available live on that website, whether it's a chat bot or otherwise, that can help you, work through that?
Yeah. I think the other one, again, this is probably an answer somewhat to Amazon, is the try before you buy model. I've seen a few good solutions show up there. And that's a great experience as well. Like, it's very, you're increasing the conversion rate, reducing the barrier to make that decision, because it's much less frightening to, get a box of 10 things knowing that, hey, if I don't, like these, but now you're probably going to always convert, 30 to 50% of that order. In some cases, you're going to hit the jackpot and convert 100% of that order, but you've increased your conversions greatly by removing that barrier. Yeah,
no, certainly. Other areas that we've sort of been seeing traction in and are making recommendations to our clients, in-cart financing, pay over time.
Mm-hmm.
In a world with the unemployment economy the way it is, and with the holidays coming, it's going to be helpful to a lot of folks to get that stuff in there. Like you talked about, the logistics, reverse logistics piece of this, and order tracking, something I never really considered. Now I'm seeing techs out there in the space that literally are consolidated tracking of all your orders. In a world in which people in many areas will not be able to see their loved ones face to face to give Christmas gifts or holiday gifts this year, there's going to be a lot of packages floating around where people are going to be wondering where their deliveries are and if they're there in time. So certainly those are areas where, where else are you seeing focus, and you think, as we enter the holiday season with Amazon Prime Day just in our rearview mirror, understanding that we don't have a lot of time for heavier engagements and light lifts, low hanging fruit, easy things merchants can be doing right now that are, can be implemented in the span of a week and will drive ROI.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. Make sure that I can't believe how many merchant sites I hit that don't sell gift cards. Like, it's a no-brainer.
Or I still hit this. I hit one today. Don't offer guest checkout.
Yeah.
When the reality is on many of these platforms, it's the matter of creating a password at the end of checkout. At a minimum, offer that guest checkout up front, and then at the end say, hey, if you want to create an account, just give us a password. Now, it's that psychological barrier of, oh my gosh, now I have to create an account to order. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I'm done.
Realizing I do it too, and I'm in e-commerce. It's not until I hit the end of that checkout where I'm like, oh, well, I had set you the same information anyway to place my order, so why not create an account if I'm interested in it?
Yeah. No, I agree. So I think those are two super easy ones. On the marketing side, there's some kind of no-brainers, and I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago, but kind of two overlooked segments. One to me is kind of the most interesting is it's the people who shopped with you in January, which means they went and returned whatever they got, or they got money and they came and shopped with you. So try to get them early, add a segment to everybody who purchased from you, not just in November and December, but who purchased from you in January. And they're probably going to be the people buying for themselves. But that's kind of an easy one. And I think too, I was on two sites today, and a lot of people don't have what their return policy is on their PDP. Absolute no-brainer to have a pop-up that clearly states what your return policy is. Have it right by the buy button. Yeah, and then the last one, if you're selling shoes or clothing, have a sizing pop up. Everybody knows it's going to be 70% accurate, but put it in there with Euro and US sizing options. These are like super easy things to implement that you're killing your conversions if you don't have what your return process is and what your sizing is. Super easy things to fix.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Couple more questions. I know we said half an hour, but we're at 37, but just always enjoy talking with you. I also have one question from a user, but before that, we haven't talked SMS, email, and as merchants go into the holiday season, we all acknowledge that, merchants should have a welcome series, abandoned cart, abandoned browse, all those sort of core flows that are recognized. Many merchants don't, budget, resources, all those things. But when you enter the holiday season, are there adjustments that need to be made in those? Meaning, if your February through August cart abandon is 2 hours or 2 days or whatever your cart abandon is, are people thinking different in the holidays? And do you need to go in and tweak those marketing automation flows to account for a different mindset over the holidays?
You got a lot of competing eyeballs. I think that's a great observation, Andrew, is that you need to probably reduce that time and make those automations run quicker. You don't want to wait 24 hours for an abandoned cart, because chances are they've already had another glass of wine and bought whatever it was they were looking for somewhere else. So I think push is a really good channel here. And I think SMS and MMS is also a good channel here because it's the immediacy. I do really like push though, because if they've have no activity for 10 minutes, going like, hey, your card is here, and so the chances are they're looking at another website and comparing you to somewhere else. So I think speeding up those interactions is super important. And on the kind of welcome series piece, I think you change your messaging. Chances are they didn't buy for themselves. They probably purchased a gift for somebody. So I think you need to change the way that you're marketing to them, see if they have other people to buy for, give them some gift idea suggestions on that welcome series, and change the voice of who you're speaking to, because you're probably not speaking to the recipient.
Yeah, it's funny. There's this debate I think that's been going on. People always talk about how the holidays are such a great time to do A/B testing because your traffic is so high. But at the same time, people aren't buying for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what how are you maximizing that traffic through the holidays to collect data and garner insights that will actually benefit you in your remarketing, in your marketing automation, and your follow-up emails?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think if you're A/B testing heavily right now, you're probably getting skewed results that are going to put you on the wrong path for Q1 and Q2 of next year, if you're making those decisions. Yeah.
But I guess you could use that data to remarket in 10 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. The last question from the audience is, how are you growing as rapidly as you are? How do you maintain a high quality of personnel and have the right team members and consistently deliver that high level of service? When the market right now in the tech space, it's pretty competitive.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So for me, it is all in, hiring slowly, and making sure that you've got somebody who's, got I don't care what position we're hiring for. I always look for people that have some service background in their. I don't care if it was waiting tables in college. I don't care if it was bartending or working at Gap. But one thing that I love to see in somebody's CV is that they were a helper in some past role. To me, that's just a clear indicator that that they've got what it takes to be a merchant first kind of attitude in the organization. I'd say, really it's hiring slow, making sure that we do our due diligence, and then making sure that we have a good onboarding process. And again, for me, it's also, how you look at, those leads that you hire and making sure that they are, really good at training. I always like to make sure that they're working on the business and not in the business. So, if you've got leads, their job is to empower those reports to them, and giving them enough time to do that means taking them out of frontline operations as much as possible so that they can really concentrate on strategy, training, enablement, nurturing that team, making sure that everybody has the resources they've got.
Yeah, I love that answer. Really appreciate it. Jamie, as always, fantastic chatting with you. I'm sure we'll get back soon, but thanks for joining us in Roast
Yeah.
Week, and hope to see you at a conference before too long.
Yeah, I do as well. But yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thanks Overdose. Have a chill day.
Take care. Have that dirty martini for me.
Okay. See ya.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.